Hi everyone, just a quick one to show you how you do these like sanity mechanics in games where you have some variable, sanity, which decreases as the player enters certain areas and then recovers when they leave. This is the example of what we're going to be doing. See here, in the top left of the viewport we've got 100. In blue that's our current sanity value, and as I walk around here that starts to decrease. And as it decreases, notice how the colour is drained out of the image and the contrast is turned up to make it a much harsher image. That's just, you could put any effect you wanted there. This is just what I've done for demonstration. Notice sanity won't go below 0, and then when I leave that area and come back around here, sanity starts to recover and the picture starts to return to normal. To begin with, this is just a third-person template with a couple of stuff from the starter content added, just because when we drain the colour out of the image there needs to be some things there to show that effect on. To begin with, we can start by making a blueprint inheriting from actor to be our sanity volume, which I'm just going to call bb underscore sanity volume. You can argue that technically it should be insanity volume, but okay, whatever. And all we need in here, we need one component, which is going to be a collision box. So add component, box collision. Give that slightly bigger default size, like 200x, 200y, 200z maybe. And this is what we're going to detect collisions on the player with. So we'll create that first before we do any work in the event graph, just so we can add a variable of this type to the player blueprint, or an array of them, in fact. So in our player's blueprint, we can select the player, go edit third person character, or browse for it in the content browser. We're going to have two variables to represent the value that we're changing, which in this case is sanity, and the rate at which we would want to change it. Add a float variable, sanity, make that float there. Add another float called sanity change, or rate of change, something like that. Compile, so we can set the default values. Sanity can be defaulting to 100. Sanity change, let's default that to, let's leave it on 0. Now, what we need to do here is have another variable to be a list, or well, an array of how many of these volumes are we overlapping, which ones are there. So we'll call this current sanity volumes. Change this to be of our blueprint type BP sanity volume, object reference, and we'll make that an array because we could be overlapping more than one of these at a time. What's going to happen is we're going to add and remove to this array whichever sanity volumes we're currently overlapping. And if we're overlapping none, we'll know to regain sanity. If we're overlapping at least one, to lose it. We will do that in event tick. So event tick will run every single frame. As you may know, well, it doesn't have to be every frame, but it's easier to think of it like that in this case. You can slow down the tick rate to be whatever you want per actor, but we can leave it as it is. First of all, we want a sequence just to make this a little bit tidier. We'll leave it just with the two outputs for now, but we'll add more as we need them. First thing we need to do is ask, are we currently overlapping any sanity volumes? Now, as I say, when we start overlapping one, we're going to make it add itself to this array. And when we leave, we're going to make it remove itself from the array. So if the array has a length of 0, we're not overlapping any of these volumes, and if it has a length higher than 0, then we are. So let's check if the array length is greater than 0 with a branch. If you don't know the shortcut for branch, you just hold B for branch and then click. It's something I use all the time. Right, so what do we want to do? If we do have a length greater than 0, we are inside at least one sanity volume. So our sanity change is going to be set to a negative number. Now I'm just going to go with -10 here. You can do that to whatever you want. If we're not overlapping any sanity volumes, then we're going to gain sanity back. Let's put that on a positive number, so +10. So positive, the same number that we put up here, basically. Now that's all done and out of the way. The next thing we want to do, every tick, we will take our sanity change, which will either be +10 or -10, depending on how this went. We will multiply that by delta seconds, which we get from tick. What that means is this sanity number will change at the same rate no matter what the frame rate of the machine is. So we haven't got to worry about things like if we're running at 30 FPS the sanity will change less than if we're running at 60, because this will cancel it all out. So what we do sanity change multiplied by delta seconds. We will take whatever that is, add that onto our existing sanity. So you'll see we could be adding a negative number up here, which we'll subtract. Just get that arranged like that for now. We will then check, has that gone above 100 or below 0, using a clamp float. Now, I'm just going to hard code in minimum 0, maximum 100. You might want other variables here like min sanity, max sanity, that's up to you. So what will happen is, if value is between 0 and 100, it will come through unaffected. If value is less than 0, then 0 will come out. If value is greater than 100, then 100 will come out. And what we will do is set whatever that is back into our sanity variable. And let me just tidy up this a bit. Now then, what we'll do when we've got this far, we'll just test it by printing that value on the screen. Okay, so add another pin to our sequence. Just come down here and just do a print string. What we want to print, we'll take the sanity value, that's what we're printing. I can't drop that straight on there. Put that onto there. By having a duration of 0, it'll only print for 1 frame, which is what we want. And we don't need to print to the log. Okay, now before any of that's going to work, we need to do a little bit more in our volume blueprint. So let's go back to sanity volume blueprint, delete the stuff that's here because we don't need it. All we want is for our box, the on component begin overlap and the on component end overlap. On component begin overlaps there, end overlap there. And what we want to see is, when something starts overlapping this box, was it the third person character, which we can find out by doing a cast to third person character. And let's just copy and paste this down here as well. If it was a third person character, whatever we wire up here will run. We will say go into the third person character, do a get that array, and get current sanity volumes. If that's not an option, you may not have pressed compile in your character blueprint. And then what we're going to do is do an add unique on this. And what we're going to add to that array is our self, this sanity volume. So we'll just right click, go self, get reference to self, and put that in there. So think about what's going to happen here. The player walks into this box. We grab hold of their sanity volumes list and add ourself, this blueprint, to it. And by doing an add unique, we ensure that we can only be added once. So you can't have 2 or 3 of the same sanity volume in the list, which should never happen anyway, but we may as well do it like that. Then when the player leaves this box again, we take the same array and we remove ourself from it. There we go. Oh, and then we need the reference to self. There. Now we can drop a couple of these in the level and test it. We'll compile that, go back to the map, drop that there, space a couple of times to get to the scale tool and maybe make this a little bit bigger. And I'm going to make sure these volumes overlap just so you can see that it works whether we're standing inside 1 or 2 of them. Then we'll alt drag to copy that, shrink it this way a bit, but extend it this way a bit, and maybe put that there. And are these in the right place? Yeah, that's fine. Right then, so let's hit play. There we've got our 100 being printed out in the top left of the viewport. Then as I walk inside these volumes, you'll see that starts to tick down. And it ticks down at the same rate whether I'm standing inside 1 of them or 2 of them. After it hits 0, it should stop going down. There you go. Then when I leave all sanity volumes, it will start to tick back up again, like that. And again, it will stop when it gets to 100. Let's just test if that works. I mean, there's no reason it shouldn't, but you never know. Yep, there you go, that's fine. And if we walk back in, that starts to tick down again. And then we could use that variable to drive any kind of visual effects or whatever it was your game needed. In here, we're just going to mess with the colours. So we'll go back into third person character. We don't really need this print string anymore, but I'll leave it there. Just get a bit more space by moving some of this stuff out the way. Add another pin here. Now what we want to do is go into our camera and just mess with the post-process settings a bit so we can fiddle with the colours and contrast, saturation and contrast specifically. So we'll grab our camera component, do a get post-process settings on that. From here, we want to do a set members in post-process settings. So we're basically changing the post-process settings on the camera now. Let's wire that into there. What we want to do from here is first of all say what is it that we actually want to set. So if you highlight this set members in post-process settings, by default, and this is a good thing, it doesn't just list every possible option because there are, as you can see, hundreds. We want to go into color grading global. In there we want saturation, and we'll just do saturation for now and then come back to it and do contrast. Our saturation, it starts off on 1, 1, 1, 1. In fact, if I just click on saturation and put a make vector 4, you're specifying 4 numbers between, well, as low as 0 but as high as you want. The default is 1, 1, 1, 1. We want it so that when our sanity is 100, it's 1, 1, 1, 1, and when it's 0, it's all zeros. So if you think about it, all we need to do is take our sanity value and divide that by 100. And this is where if instead of doing what I've done, where I've just hard-coded 100 in, if you've got a max sanity variable, it will be divided by max sanity there. Put that in, and let's just see what happens. So everything looks normal. Then as sanity drops, the colour should start to be drained out of the image. You can see there the sky is already turning quite grey. All the colour's being drained out of here. So by the time sanity gets to 0, you're looking at a black and white image. And then as you leave, the colour will start to come back. So the last thing to do then is mess with the contrast to make the effect more dramatic. Now contrast, we just add this, there you go, is going to work a little bit differently because by default it is 1, 1, 1, 1. And what we want is when sanity is 100, it's 1, 1, 1, 1. Then as sanity decreases, the contrast increases. So the way we want to do that is we'll have a copy of that make vector 4, and we'll start with a vector 4 all set to 1, 1, 1, 1. Then we'll subtract from that this vector 4 that we worked out here, which is our sanity over 100. So we're basically inverting it. So this and this are essentially the opposite of each other. When this one is all zeros, this one will be all ones, and vice versa. So, or another way to think of it, this increases as sanity decreases, whereas this is the other way around. Now what we'll do is take that, we'll get another all ones vector, add to it the result of this. So we'll start off at normal contrast and add on whatever this is doing. Put that into there, and that should give us the effect. Now obviously, in your project, this will be whatever you want. Play some sound effects, make the character behave differently, trigger some weird noise, whatever you need. So let's see. So as we drop sanity now, as well as the colour being drained, the contrast should get more and more. See how everything's much more sharply black and white. It's like a much harsher image. Then once again, as we leave the area, the contrast will start to return to normal and the colour will come back. So that's just a really simple example of how you can have, we've used sanity as the example because it's used in quite a lot of games, but any variable which needs to have its value raised or lowered depending on is the player inside some kind of volume, some kind of area, where you could have multiple of these areas all overlapping each other. That is a simple way that you would do it. So I hope you found that useful, and I'll see you guys later.